somehow, some way, someone thought that it was a great idea to create an R.I.P.D sequel. Now, I will admit, when this movie came out, I was not one of the major critics against it. I thought it was a decent movie. I thought it was decent. Keyword, decent. I didn't think it was great. I didn't want a sequel to it either. I thought it was what it was and just let it go. It wasn't as great as what I thought it would be. Or it wasn't as good as what I thought it'd be. I thought it had a good cast. I thought the cast was good. I thought the idea was interesting. I just thought it just wasn't a very good movie. But here we are, all these years later, 9 years after the fact, it says, a sequel to the critically reviled box office bomb R.I.P.D. is in the works without Ryan Reynolds and Jeff Bridges. And you gotta ask yourself this one question, and I've always wondered this. Would it be looked at as that terrible of a film if it hadn't have been a box office bomb? I mean, think about all these different Marvel movies that's coming out that you're just like, wow, that was actually not a very good movie. Like, I can think of like the Black Widow movie. Like, you can just say, well, that just wasn't a very good movie. To most people, I mean, that was a terrible movie. They joked about hysterectomies, for goodness sakes. Forced hysterectomies, for goodness sakes. I mean, don't get any much lower than that. Let's just put it that way. And those movies are looked at, and they're not looked at in the same way as R.I.P.D. is. Simply because Marvel can do no wrong in the eyes of fans, simply because fans will still go see the works even if it's bad. They might not recommend it, and it might not make $1 billion, but they'll still, go and see it. And they won't review bomb it and all that. Of course, I'm still kind of iffy on review bombing. But anyways, let's just get into R.I.P.D. Like I said, I feel like maybe to a certain extent, it is a better film than what people make on. I feel like they hate it simply because it was a box office blunder in that regard. But if it wasn't, if it was the normal Ryan Reynolds movie, I feel like maybe then we'd be looking at this movie in a completely different light. Simply because it made money. But let's go ahead and let's read about this. A critically reviled comic book movie released in the 2010s and starring Ryan Reynolds is getting a sequel, and no, somehow it's not Green Lantern. Thank goodness. As reported by Comic Book, notorious commercial flop and critical failure, R.I.P.D. is getting a sequel, R.I.P.D. 2, Rise of the Damned. The decade-late sequel to the infamous 2013 film was rated by the MPAA, and a few unofficial details have surfaced on IMDb. The first R.I.P.D. film, based on a Dark Horse series of the same name by Peter M. Linkov, was released in 2013. It was a dramatic box office failure, grossing just $78 million worldwide on a budget of more than $130 million. Reviews for the film were not kind either. At the time, CBR's Josh Wigler said of the film, "Within minutes, I just wanted it to end." I didn't feel that way towards it. I thought it was like, I watched it and it was one of those films I was like, it wasn't bad, it just wasn't good. Peacefully or otherwise, that sentiment was echoed among with other critics, and the movie has since languished in more or less complete cultural obscurity. R.I.P.D. came at a rough time for Reynolds' career as a comic book superhero. Of course, I'm not going into the whole Green Lantern thing, which again was not the worst movie, just not the best movie. X-Men Origins Wolverine was a bad movie. I will give it that. And I feel like Ryan Reynolds doesn't get talked about enough for the movie Blade Trinity. There's a lot of bad movies he's been in that I feel like have got passed over, and he hasn't got critiqued so much for these bad movies. Simply because of who he is. Says, according to comic book, Reynolds will not be returning for R.I.P.D 2, Rise of the Damned, and co-star Jeff Bridges is also out of the picture. The two have been replaced by a cast featuring Richard Fleischman, Jake Choi, Carrie Nupp, and Stephanie Levi-John. R.I.P.D director Robert Swinsky is also absent from the crew, replaced by Paul Layden. Also missing is any indication of a sequel to the bizarre tie-in video game released alongside the original film, which was published by Persona and Shin Megami Tensei, developer of Atlas. I mean, look. Is it the sequel that I wanted to see? No. It's not one I was calling for. It's not one that I think many people were calling for. It had its moments. It was decent. I'm not going to hate on it. But man, you know, there are so many better films out there that could be getting sequels. Truly better. I mean, to a certain extent, when I saw this, I'm like, good for them that they're getting a sequel. But when you don't have Ryan Reynolds and Bridges and all them coming back, it's basically a made for, I don't know, television movie at this point. It's like the Scorpion King movies after that. Like, they're not going to live up to the standards of the first one. So it's just going to be like a really kind of B-rated, C-rated movie from the beginning. It's never going to be thought of as anything more. It's not going to be of those standards. It's going to be more sci-fi standard movie, those standards, more than it's going to be big Hollywood standards. So they're not going to go all out. I think that pretty much tells you what they think of this movie by not bringing back Ryan Reynolds or Jeff Bridges for these roles. But anyways, guys, let me know what y'all think in the comments down below. Are y'all excited about an R.I.P.D sequel? Do you feel like it deserved one? Let me know in the comments down below. I personally believe it did not. But it wasn't as bad as what people say it is. Anyways, guys, let me know what y'all think in the comments down below. And as always, thanks for watching. Y'all take care.